Thought I'd read a bit of the Constitution of Australia today, because it is quite an interesting book. See, the blurb is a bit kind of blurred out. Probably because they didn't print it very well. But yeah, I guess it's general kind of guidelines, overarching guidelines on how things work. Published by the East India Publishing Company in Ottawa, Canada. Alright. It's interesting. So, I guess this includes most of the 6 amendments to the Constitution since 1900. Australia Act 1986, I think, was something about immigration or something like that, I think. Yeah, probably something like that. 64. Australia Act. Oh, no, it's more like bringing constitutional arrangements. Okay, as a sovereign kind of nation. So I guess this is one of those acts or laws or stuff that has been very key, vital in defining Australia as its own sovereign nation, apart from the Crown, kind of in the UK, enacted to the Constitute the Commonwealth of Australia. Excellent majesty, temporal, spiritual, commons, etc. So I guess this is kind of preface. It's pretty nice, I guess. Proclamation of the Commonwealth. It shall be lawful for the Queen, with the advice of the Privy Council, to declare a proclamation of each of those states listed. Governor General, etc. So you notice Northern Territory was part of New South Wales and Southern Australia beforehand, before it kind of became its own thing. New South Wales was kind of like the big state back then. Then you had the division into Queensland, Western Australia, Tasmania, Victoria, Southern Australia. Eventually the Northern Territory and the ACT later on as well. So again, more of the preface tells you stuff about the definitions and the kind of repeal of the Federal Council Act in 1885. I actually don't know what that is. I think that was the yeah, probably an old kind of law that bound Australia to the UK in a way, I think, because they repealed it. Application of the Colonial Boundaries Act. Yeah, so I guess that's an interesting start. Not apply any colony which becomes a state of the Commonwealth. But the Commonwealth shall be taken to be a self-governing colony for the purposes of that act. Yeah, so that kind of makes sense in that regard, I guess. Where, I guess the Federal Council Act of Australasia, at least, was actually more of a forerunner, I think, rather than like any kind of stronger ties to the UK. I guess that was something that was built upon in the Colonial Boundaries Act. which allows Australia. So it shall not apply to any colony which becomes a state of the Commonwealth, but the Commonwealth shall be taken as a self-governing colony for the purposes of that act. Okay. I think that was a UK Act, by the way. Provisions relating to Governor General. Summoning Parliament. First session, yearly session of Parliament. 12 months shall not intervene between the last sitting of the Parliament in one session and its sitting in the next session. So that's very interesting, sir. That's the first part, which is mostly about your general kind of parliamentary stuff. So, your court of discussions, PMs, members of parliament. The first kind of statement is, the legislative power of the Commonwealth shall be vested in a federal parliament, which shall consist of the Queen, a Senate, and a House of Representatives, and which is hereinafter called the Parliament, or the Parliament of the Commonwealth. So that's the main kind of structure or governing body in the ACT. That kind of overlooks everything else. And again, you have the House of Representatives and the Senate. We kind of have a two chamber system, kind of similar to the United States. I think it was actually inspired by the United States, which is why Australian government ideals or ideology is generally called like Washminster, like Washington and Westminster, as a kind of like a Frankenstein kind of thing. Governor General. A Governor General appointed by the Queen shall be Her Majesty's representative in the Commonwealth, and shall have and may exercise in the Commonwealth during the Queen's pleasure. But subject to this Constitution, such powers and functions of the Queen as Her Majesty may be pleased to assign to him. So the Queen can pretty much allow the representative, I guess the Governor General, to make the decisions on her behalf and represent her. And it says it may exercise in the Commonwealth during the Queen's pleasure. I guess, again, and the powers and functions of the Queen, I mean, if it's already pretty low, and if the Queen doesn't really have much power to begin with, I guess giving the Governor General the power of the Queen is probably not going to be very potent. And again, today the Governor General doesn't really do too much, except your kind of usual celebratory, your usual kind of traditional stuff. Salary of the Governor General. Okay, so again, there shall be payable to the Queen out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Commonwealth for the salary of the Governor General, an annual sum which, until the Parliament otherwise provides, shall be £10,000. So that's actually quite interesting, right? It shall not be altered during his continuance in office. I guess this could be interpreted as £10,000 in the currency of the time, which, if accounted for inflation, would be quite a lot more, I guess. Or I guess they could probably just choose to ignore it, or kind of like provide literally £10,000 in today's money but then, be able to provide extras on top of that, because it kind of just says salary of the Governor General, maybe in a specific context in his works, but in some other works it could probably be different. Provisions. So again, there's a bunch of stuff relating to the Governor General and the Queen, which is very interesting. Again, Australia is quite tied traditionally and culturally to the UK as a colony, and kind of like an offshoot, or really kind of like an extension of the UK itself. A lot of people in Australia are actually from the UK. They were actually born in the UK and they kind of immigrated here. So you can see some of the ties probably do kind of make sense. Yeah, so kind of this part, I guess, kind of talks about sessions of Parliament, summoning the Parliament, kind of the yearly sessions of the Parliament. It's quite specific, actually. There shall be a session of the Parliament once at least in every year, so that 12 months shall not intervene between the last sitting of the Parliament in one session and its first sitting in the next session. So I guess they want the Parliament to not be lazy and have at least one session once a year, I guess. That's interesting. The Senate shall be composed of senators for each state, directly chosen by the people of the state, voting until the Parliament otherwise provides as one electorate. But until the Parliament of the Commonwealth otherwise provides, the Parliament of the State of Queensland, if that state be an original state, may make laws dividing the state into divisions and determining the number of senators to be chosen for each division, and in the absence of such provision, the state shall be one electorate. So in Australia, our states are usually composed of a bunch of different electorates, and generally, the big cities in each state have a bunch of electorates, like, tens to hundreds of electorates. In New South Wales, there's a bunch of electorates, kind of. If you look at the map here, just right near Sydney, there's like, all your kind of tiny electorates bundled up, and towards the western sides and the kind of northern or southern sides, the kind of electorates get quite bigger. And again, it's pretty representative of the way the population works, I guess. You're near the cities, kind of divide places up into electorates, and that's how, I guess, you represent groups of people, populations, kind of equally, I guess. Probably similar to the United States as well. Representation. 6 senators. So they should have 6 senators, but I think it's actually around 12 now. Yeah. So that's probably something that has been changed since then, and they should be chosen for a term of 6 years, which I guess makes sense as well. Names of senators chosen for each senate shall be certified by the governor to the Governor General. Did they talk about the term limits for Parliament? Maybe not. Summoning Parliament. By the way, I noticed they actually also have a clause that kind of says talks about like right off of the Commonwealth, which is kind of interesting. It's quite like specific and kind of time based for something you'd think would be more natural or generic, like the American Constitution, which is quite generic and timeless, I would say. But okay, so they might talk a bit more about the Parliament and those roles in the House of Representatives. Application of state laws. Until the Parliament otherwise provides, but subject to this Constitution, the laws in force in each state for this time being, relating to elections for the more numerous House of Parliament of the state, shall, as nearly as practicable, apply to elections of senators for the state. So again, I guess that's like a pretty roundabout way of saying, you have laws in each state, and elections and things that are applicable to the elections of the senators for the states. Qualifications of electors. The qualification of electors of senators shall be in each state that which is prescribed by this Constitution or by the Parliament as a qualification for electors of members of the House of Representatives, but in the choosing of senators each elector shall vote only once. So, I guess you would elect your senators in the state that I guess they come from, I guess. And the senators of each, but in the choosing of senators, each elector shall vote only once. So each person that is voting for a senator can only vote once, I guess. Which I guess makes sense. I mean, you only have one vote, kind of proportion-based vote. That's probably what it's referring to, at least the voting for the Senate. Application of state laws until the Parliament otherwise provides, but subject to this Constitution. The laws in force in each state, for the time being, relating to elections for the more numerous House of the Parliament of the state, shall, as nearly as practicable, apply to elections of senators for the state. So that's the kind of thing I read just then. Failure to choose senators. The Senate may proceed to the dispatch of business, notwithstanding the failure of any state to provide for its representation in the state. Okay, so I guess, look, if you don't choose the senators for a state, that's again, it's too bad. I guess you just have to keep going. Better luck next time. Issue of writs. The governor of any state may cause writs to be issued for elections of senators for the state. In case of the dissolution of the Senate, the writs shall be issued within 10 days from the proclamation of dissolution. The writs. Yeah, so... And again, they call it the governors of any state. I guess the governor probably doesn't really have much power, at least compared to the premier that's elected. Premier, or really, yeah, kind of the state senator itself. Soon as me, and I think they choose their own premier, at least the party in power. At least the one that holds majority seating. I'm not actually sure what happens if parties don't. If a party isn't able to like form a majority government, or there's like a mix. I think they kind of just have to like go through with it anyway, or like do a re-election, really something like that. I guess that's kind of one of the issues with these kind of things, where it's like even in a proportional based system, it really is kind of just too bad if you face these problems, which is why one of the issues that I'm kind of solving is kind of these issues where you instead are able to then vote directly on issues, and again kind of bypass this kind of crap sometimes. It is actually quite efficient in Australia, it seems, at least compared to America, where they seem to really take their time on certain things. House of Representatives, composed of members directly chosen by the people of the Commonwealth. A number of such members as these twice the number of senators. So you can see at least this is kind of like the initial numbers, I guess, where so that's when kind of Western Australia became its own state. And you can see it's kind of proportional based on the number of people in each state. 26, 23, 9, 7, 5. Quite big. That's kind of where most of the people in Australia live, New South Wales and Victoria. Although Queensland is quite filling up quite fast, apparently. Heard Perth was also becoming quite big too. Adelaide, I think, maybe stagnating. And Darwin, I think Darwin's just Darwin. Canberra, I think it's growing pretty big too, but it's pretty new and small, so I don't know. It's kind of close as well. It's the kind of big cities like Sydney and Melbourne probably would be leeching off its population because it just has so many more opportunities in those places. But yeah, House of Representatives where the executive kind of branch goes. Senate is where they kind of the next stage of voting on bills and stuff like that. So you have a more, I guess, separate kind of thing. So otherwise you would have like an echo chamber, I guess. Writs qualification. Yeah, look, I mean, absence of a speaker. So that's quite interesting. I mean, there's, if you look at the American Constitution, there's quite a lot of amendments that are quite general. Here, it's quite specific in terms of things like the exact number of senators, when you form your Commonwealth, the exact states that are in power right now, and stuff like that. There's powers of Parliament. So this is something that's probably quite, again, pretty damn specific in terms of borrowing money on the public credit, and also things like lighthouses, light ships, beacons, and buoys, like even buoys, astronomical, meteorological observations, fisheries, even weights and measures as well. Corporations, marriage, divorce, matrimonial stuff, invalid and old age pensions. So I guess things like individual freedom and stuff like that isn't as important as a place like America. But even then, I mean, the individualism index in Australia is actually quite high. It's actually only like 1 point off America, so that's actually quite interesting. Even though it kind of seems like Australia's, at least the culture, cares quite a bit for the kind of collective good. And the government actually does implement a lot of kind of pretty strict collectivist policies, like, mask mandates and stuff like that. All the stuff that has come out of Australia in the last few years, especially places like Victoria. I'll just find jurisdiction. Oh, 79 clauses. Damn. So this tells you quite a bit about the law, I guess. Starting from 71. So it seems like they are kind of numbering based on the entirety, not like each section. The judicial power of the Commonwealth shall be vested in the Federal Supreme Court, or so-called the High Court of Australia. Other federal courts, as Parliament creates. I guess there are state courts as well. High Court shall consist of a Chief Justice. It's like a Supreme Court Justice, I guess. And so many other justices, not less than 2. Parliament prescribes, and, other kind of judges and justices and stuff like that are there to decide on rulings and whether or not the situation or a case matches the law and is in line with the Constitution, I guess. Constitutional law. Power to define jurisdiction. So I think by defining jurisdiction, though, it kind of just means like, it's not like introducing new laws. It means kind of more like enforcing existing jurisdiction. And it actually kind of says, look, you can have as many judges as you want. You also have juries as usual, trial and indictment of any offence against any law of the Commonwealth. Shall be by jury, and every such trial shall be held in the state where the offence was committed, and if the offence was not committed within any state, the trial shall be held at such place or places as the Parliament prescribes. So there's quite a bit of a grey area in some cases. If somebody commits a crime, maybe in a territory or something, or kind of like outside of a state, maybe near your waters, near the Australian waters, you have a right to kind of like talk about that. I guess at least the federal government kind of is able to figure out where that goes. Explain the powers of the government. Powers to make laws. So make laws, and there's quite a lot of powers that they have, it seems. Provision, matters referred. So I guess these are kind of like meta laws as well. Relations of the Commonwealth within the islands of the Pacific. Influx external affairs, railway construction. Wow. Even something like that. Conciliation and arbitration for the prevention and settlement of industrial disputes, extending beyond the limits of any one state. Matters in respect of which this Constitution makes provision until the Parliament otherwise provides. So it kind of makes something provisional, or supplies it, I guess, until the Parliament actually makes an implementation, or solidifies an implementation. Otherwise, the Constitution would probably kind of have some boilerplate thing already, or something more generic. Matters referred to the Parliament of the Commonwealth by the Parliament of Parliaments of any state or states, but so that the law shall extend only to states by whose parliaments the matter is referred, or which afterwards adopt the law. So I guess the states have a choice to adopt the law or not. Or, if a law is applied to a specific state, then that it only applies to that state then. It's exercised within the Commonwealth. It's only by the Parliament of the United Kingdom or the Federal Council of Australasia. So also they say Australasia, which is, I guess, just means Australia, but maybe including like New Zealand and Papua New Guinea, at least the eastern side. I think Port Moresby is probably part of that. A guy living there could probably be influenced. Incidental execution of power. Parliament shall, subject to the Constitution, have exclusive power to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of the Commonwealth. With respect to the seat of the government of the Commonwealth, matters relating to any department of the public service, like transfer to the executive government of the Commonwealth, other matters declared. Yeah, so exclusive powers, peace, order, and good government. Any department, okay. So they can make laws pertaining to kind of like any kind of department, the public service, health, transport, defense, etc. And it's kind of transferred to the government itself, the executive branch of the federal government. They call it the Commonwealth, government of the Commonwealth, which is probably just the federal government. Proposed laws appropriating revenue or monies by reason of only containing provisions for the imposition or appropriation of fines. Pretty cool, I guess. Vacancy, absence. Damn. President. That is... Well, okay. I mean, it seems like they're kind of just worried about... I guess this is something that's a bit more generic. In terms of, like, the rights of electors. I guess voters and taxpayers, I guess. Who has or requires a right to vote at elections for the more numerous House of the Parliament of a state shall, while the right continues, be prevented by any law of the Commonwealth from voting at elections for either House of the Parliament or either House of the Parliament of the Commonwealth. Like I said, they can vote for the Senate or the Representatives, I guess. House of Representatives. And I guess they just don't... They can't be prevented at all by any law. I guess it's almost like a First or Second Amendment. It can't be their right to vote can't be infringed on, or at least the right for a valid voter to vote. So I guess you could probably just take somebody's voting validity away, and that's just I mean. And it's law, right? So if they break the law or if they're in detention and stuff like that, maybe it just doesn't apply to them or anything. You could kind of interpret it like that or something. So I guess one of the things with this is that when a bunch of things are up to interpretation, it's just 127 Aborigines not to be counted in reckoning population. In reckoning the numbers of people of the Commonwealth or state, Aboriginal natives shall not be counted. So they don't count like Aboriginals in terms of like in the census, I guess. Or maybe does that mean more like the law or the voter population? See the government. Oh, so this is the Canberra crap, I guess. Distant not less than 100 miles from Sydney. Such territory shall contain an area not less than 100 square miles. Such portion thereof shall consist of Crown lands, shall be granted to the Commonwealth without any payment therefore. The Parliament shall sit at Melbourne until it meet at the seat of government. So yeah, that's about that, I guess. Yeah. Shall sit at the seat of Melbourne until they meet at the seat of government. So I guess it says the provisional kind of federal government will be in Melbourne before, the ACT in Canberra were made. Power to Her Majesty to authorize Governor General to appoint deputies. So I guess this is more of a ceremonial role as well. Kind of like, shall not exercise, effective exercise with the Governor General himself of any power. So this is how you will alter the Constitution, except in the following manner. So, it's be passed by an absolute majority of each House, and not less than 2 or more, nor more than 6 months after its passage through both houses. The proposed law shall be submitted in each state and territory to the electors qualified to vote for the election of members. So I guess that's kind of like, I think there was like a bill or something that, for Australia to become a republic, like a referendum. I think that would probably affect the Constitution. So I guess it's probably talking about a referendum here. Yeah, so that's I think that's fine. I guess no alteration in proposed law. The adult suffrage, adult. So I guess no children here. Majority of the states, majority of the electors voting approve the proposed law, and the majority approve all electors. It shall be presented to Governor General. Okay, so the majority of states and accept the law, then it kind of passes. Like it's 51% in terms of states, 51% in terms of each state, at least on average. Doesn't really matter exactly for each state, I guess, the percentage. Proportional 122. What was that again? Parliament may make laws for the government of any territory surrendered by any state and accepted by the Commonwealth. Okay. Placed by the Queen under the authority of and accepted by the Commonwealth, or otherwise acquired by the Commonwealth, and may allow the representation of such territory in either House of the Parliament to the extent and on the terms which it thinks fit. Okay. That's the oath. You would say, I, A.B., do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Victoria, her heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God. So again, this was during the Victorian era, and it did kind of like imply her successors. I guess it would also be applicable for Queen Elizabeth and the new King Charles. Australia Act. Sovereign independent federal nation. Measures to bring constitutional. Whereas in the pursuance, paragraph 51 of the Constitution of Parliament, the parliaments of all the states have requested the Parliament of the Commonwealth enact in terms of this Act. Termination of power, Parliament of the United Kingdom to legislate for Australia. No Act of the Parliament of the United Kingdom passed after the commencement of this Act shall extend or be deemed to extend to the Commonwealth, to a state, or to a territory as part of the law of the Commonwealth, of the state, or the territory. Because that effectively bars the UK from deciding in any kind of legislative or, kind of anything relating to the law of Australia either federal or state and territory, I guess, territorial. Legislative powers of the Parliament of States. It is hereby declared and enacted that the legislative powers of the Parliament of each state include full power to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of that state that have extraterritorial, almost thought it was terrestrial, operation. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. The kind of legislative bodies of each state and stuff like that have full power to make laws. I'm pretty sure they mean enforce, not so much, or maybe make as in like, make the law itself, not like, pass a bill or propose a bill. That's on the that's in the hands of the House of Representatives. And yeah, termination, restrictions, and Senate, I guess. Parliaments of states, legislative powers. The Act of the Parliament of the United Kingdom, Validity Act in 1865, shall not apply to any law made after the commencement of this Act by the Parliament of a state. So, the UK kind of Colonial Laws Act, which probably allowed it to decide laws and make laws for its colonies, can no longer apply. I guess this is quite interesting because I don't think the UK really cares that much about Australia. There was a recent interview with like a UK representative from an Australian reporter who asked about what they thought about Australia having to decide its own kind of currency or something like that, because there's King Charles and he's a new guy now, and Queen Elizabeth is gone now, so what do we do and stuff like that. Maybe we could just do whatever the hell we want. Maybe we don't even need to have the king or the queen anymore. I think they kind of just removed the monarchs from the bill, from the kind of banknotes. And apparently, UK guys didn't really care too much. Kind of just thought, look, you're on your own. You do whatever the hell you want. Like, why are you guys even asking me, right? That kind of really enlightened me a bit. I was like, maybe the UK doesn't really care too much. They're a country that has been very influential, superpower for a century. Invented a whole bunch of things. Something like 14% of the world's most influential kind of engineers, scientists, thinkers, etc. in the last 500 years, with Germany, France, Italy, etc. Russia. And again, why the hell would they care that much about Australia, right? And it's actually more like the Australians that probably want ties with the UK, because most Australians actually voted no against Australia becoming a republic. That's the referendum. Forgot when it was, but I think it was kind of like a just. It wasn't majority. I think it was actually over like 50%, but it wasn't like maybe 70% or something, 75%. I don't know. So that is that, I guess. This will probably make sense for a higher percentage on something as crucial or overarching as a referendum, rather than a common law or voting somebody into power, position of power. Merchant shipping. Wow, that's very specific. 94. Parliament of the UK. Section 735. Okay. Well, I guess that would probably be still quite useful. And you could probably interpret merchant shipping as really any kind of like cargo, even like planes, cargo planes, and not necessarily just cargo ships and stuff like that, I guess. But I guess that makes sense. You don't want any kind of restrictions, arbitrary kind of traditional restrictions based on trading of goods and stuff like that. I guess goods mostly, not services, because it's merchant shipping. 2 and 3. North Australia Constitution Act do not operate in force or effect on provision of an act. Statute of Westminster as amended in force. Manner and form of making certain state laws. Law made after the commencement of this act by the Parliament of a state respecting constitution powers or procedure of the Parliament of a state shall be of no force or effect unless it is made in such manner and form as may from time to time be required by a law made by that Parliament, whether made before or after commencement of this act. So again, I guess it's quite interesting. There's probably a bunch of other things, especially to do with law, might be interested in next time, I guess.